when does uh, religiosity as part of the mainstream political angle become a thing?
Hmm.
Is it the 80s
So,
or late
okay, I
70s?
think so. I mean, religiosity, and so there are two ways of thinking about it. The first is organized religious elements.
Yeah.
So people who get together and decide that they want to shake things up in religion's name
Yeah.
has always been a thing.
Yeah.
Prior to partition, Pakistan was partly created as a result of that,
Yeah.
and it continues up till the 1950s with the anti-MDA riots and so on.
Yeah.
So that's always been a thing. It sort of, I guess, it sort of gained ground in the 1980s, but in the late 1970s, 80s. But it remains, in that form. Then we have religiosity as far as societal practices are concerned, right? Are people becoming more orthodox in terms of their ritual practices? So the analogy that I draw here is with early 19th to mid 19th century US, where people ended up in what were sort of commonly called religious revivals, right? So you would have a preacher who would go to a particular place, and he would be an evangelical, obviously, and he would talk about how salvation lies in sort of becoming more orthodox in the kind of rituals that you have. And so that's how Mormonism, for example, came into being. That's how a lot of the sort of reformist faiths that we see in the US, that's when they came into being. ये जो revivalism है पाकिस्तान में, this is predominantly phenomenon of the 80s onwards, right? And it's intimately tied to urbanization.
Okay.
And it's intimately tied to changes in information and communication technology, right?
Okay.
So the great Pakistani religiosity sort of moment happens largely in the preceding 3 decades, when people are made aware of what orthodox practices in religion actually look like. Okay, bhai, what does prayer involve? What is the right way of praying, right? And obviously everything becomes a more quantified calculation of haram, halal, sawab, guna. And I think that that is only possible when you have greater sources of information and greater ways of communicating with.
वरना पहले या कैसे?
एग्जैक्टली पहले तो अमेरिकन रिवाइवलिज्म जो था वो तो ये था कि लोग एक शहर से दूसरे शहर जाते थे और वहां पे बताते थे. पाकिस्तान में भी ये होता रहा है, पूरी जिंदगी होता रहा है. बट इसको जो एक सॉर्ट ऑफ जो टेक ऑफ मिली है, that has largely been in the post 2000s environment, right? And then that's largely because of, and there are a couple of statistics that I think are genuinely mind blowing in some ways, right? In 1998, around 10% of all households in the country got their information from television. Okay. So around 10%. Obviously, the majority of this was in urban areas, a small minority in rural areas, and there were only 2 news channels, right? So STN tha, PTV tha, uske alawa kuch nahi tha. By 2017, this figure is now up to 60%. So 60% of Pakistan's population gets its information from television. And obviously इस 60% में भी आधे जो हैं उनके पास cable news है, so they have access to 50 channels, right? The rest may still have only terrestrial sort of access and so on. ठीक है, that's one major source of information getting out into the country. So Alim Online as a 2003 phenomenon, Amir Liaquat, that sort of I think escalates all the way up till 2015. Then in 2015 you have another revolution, right? So in 1998, 0% of all households in Pakistan used to get their information from a cell phone, because obviously cell phones did not exist. That number in 2017, which is on the basis of the last census that we had, is 98%.
Wow, everyone.
8% of all households, rural, urban, the difference is minimal between the two. So 98% of all households get information, broadly defined as news, as totke, as recipes, as whatever you want to call it, get their information from cell phones, right? Nearly 70% of all adults in Pakistan have access to mobile broadband, and they're consuming information off it. Now, the type and nature of that info varies drastically. I'm using it to consume YouTube vlogs and podcasts. Someone else might be using it to consume, food recipes or whatever it is. And the third person might be using it to consume religious evangelical messages, right? But that's how the message gets out.
Which really raises a huge amount of concern about the nature and the positioning of the information that people are consuming, and how aware you are of those factors that are driving it. Like with TV, it could be, does a channel have a lean towards the left or
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
how sensationalist do they want to be with regards to their lean, and how that affects their ad space. With the internet, nobody realizes that all of this is algorithm based,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you are being shown what you want to see, and why is that even wrong?
And there's a fundamental problem here. I mean, it's not a problem. It's actually just a fundamental sort of feature of this entire thing is that it also democratizes religious voice as well, right? To a certain extent, that it allows someone to then sort of share their perspective on what orthodoxy looks like, or share their perspective. And I don't want to sort of turn this into a controversial discussion, but like share their perspective on what blasphemy, for example, sounds like, right? So for me, I think that really is the sea change that's happened as far as religiosity in Pakistan is concerned, and so you have this debate on Twitter every now and then, the Ramadan debate and all of those sort of really cliched conversations that we. Is Pakistan becoming more religious? This was what Pakistan was like in the 1970s.
Yeah,
I think Pakistan is just consuming more, and religion is just one of those things that it's consuming a lot more of. If Pakistan is consuming footlong shawarmas and Pakistan is consuming zinger biryani, then Pakistan is also consuming religious evangelicals using WhatsApp voice notes and YouTube videos and TikTok and so on.